It was November of last year when 12-year-old Tamir Rice was playing in a Cleveland park. He had an airsoft pistol, but the orange safety tip had been removed, so even those with trained eyes might have a difficult time determining the weapon. Now, responding to a 911 call, officers drove their car up to the suspect, and as they got out of the vehicle, Rice appeared to reach for the airsoft gun in his waistband. The officers opened fire. There are those who say that if Tamir Rice was a young white kid in a more upscale neighborhood, police may not have been so quick to pull the trigger. Hardline host Ed Berliner spoke with Daily Beast columnist Barrett Pitner about whether race may have been a determining factor in how police responded to Tamir Rice.
Barrett, thanks a lot for joining us. I wish it was under better circumstances, certainly, than in this Rice case. It's absolutely tragic what happened to this young man. But now we have two expert reports that say what the police did was reasonable. As you see it and as you have looked at this story, how do you then view what these reviews have said about what happened?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back, Ed. And to look at these reports and the reasonable assessment that or the claim of reasonable, I guess you have to look at, they used it based on the interpretation of the officer, Mr. Lohman. And he, in his previous time at Independence, Ohio, at that police precinct, they said that he lacked the emotional stability to be a police officer. So you have to take this assessment of the threat that he felt was imminent posed by this 12-year-old child to be with a grain of salt, because that requires a lot of emotional stability to make that sort of judgment.
Well, don't we also have to, if I can interrupt you for a sec, don't we also, though, have to bring into the conversation that, and we've said this before, you just said it too, a 12-year-old child. He did not know how old this kid was. They really didn't know until it happened, yes?
Well, of course, but one of the big issues we talk about policing minority and low-income communities are, do the police officers have a good relationship with the people in that community? That's one of the best ways to adequately police any environment. And if you are not familiar with the people around you, then that's going to create problems that would be easily preventable if you ingratiate yourself with the community, which is what they encourage a lot of police officers to do. So the fact that he didn't have a positive rapport with this child actually is a negative reflection on the policing ability. And then if you add in that he lacked the emotional stability to be a police officer at his previous police precinct where he lasted less than 6 months, then you have to really question his judgment in this decision.
What about the fact that we have to bring this into it as well, Barrett, that this and the last guest that we had on, Bob France, who's a radio talker in Cleveland, even he indicated as well, this neighborhood has a history of gang violence, notorious gangs here, reigns of terror, guns being used on an everyday basis. Can we not say that that has to be put in here, maybe more than race, or is race still the determining factor?
If we want to include the fact that this neighborhood is quite dangerous, do we then say that the best way for police to eradicate this danger in the neighborhood is to pull up and, kill innocent people in less than, 10 seconds? That's not an adequate way to police any environment. If it's too dangerous, you don't want to go in there and create more danger, create elements of fear where people are fearful of the entities that are going to try to police them and help them and keep them safe. That only stokes the fire, even if the reality is that this neighborhood is quite dangerous.
Is the reality, too, I got about 60 seconds left, that we still have to look at the fact that this gun looked real. The orange cap was off it. Kid with a gun, anybody with a gun. Don't we still have to look at the responsibility here, parents, guardians, people involved? Just the fact that this kid could have a gun and wave it around in any sort of a menacing fashion, that in itself is a little bit frightening, isn't it?
Well, I'd say, frankly, there's a lot of places where people walk around carrying loaded arms, actual real guns, and police officers give them a lot more discretion and respect and treat them as just regular people. And so I think that's the thing we should take away from this, because right now we're talking about a very slight margin of error for any parent, where if you mistake something, your kid's out of your sight and he has a gun that looks potentially real, we shouldn't excuse police officers to come up and shoot them without even talking to them, questioning them, or anything. I think the onus should be on the police officers to make really adequate judgments while they police communities and treat people humanely.
10 seconds. Do you think the parents bear some responsibility here?
No, I do not. The kid was playing in a park with his friends. Lots of people have had BB guns throughout, as long as I can remember the United States. And if having a BB gun is a crime, then we live in a pretty dangerous and negative society.
All right, interesting interview with Ed Berliner. Now, Tamir Rice's mother, Samaria, is demanding that a special prosecutor take over the case just days after prosecutors released reports that might clear the officer. A spokesman for prosecuting attorney Timothy McGinty says, quote, "We are still in the investigation and analysis stage on this case. Contrary to what some people may believe, we have an open mind and have not come to any conclusions." The mother and her attorney plan to discuss the release of the reports at a news conference tomorrow. We will be covering that news conference. Straight ahead here on The Hardline, we talk to the car coach, Lauren Fix, on the latest VW issues. And also, we're going to talk about self-driving cars, a segment of the population really interested in getting into those cars. That's straight ahead here on The Hardline. Did you know that if you suffer cardiac arrest outside of a hospital, you have just a 7% chance of survival? Heart disease kills more people than any other medical condition in the United States each year. No one is more aware of this than world-renowned cardiologist Dr. Chauncey Crandall, who's dedicated the last 30 years of his career to helping his patients win the fight against heart disease. And that's why he has written this best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure. The Simple Heart Cure reveals Dr. Crandall's groundbreaking 90-day program that helps stop and actually reverse heart disease. You'll discover how to slash your risk of a deadly heart attack by 61%. 8 steps to safely lower your blood pressure. Proven ways to banish your bad cholesterol. Strategies to unclog your arteries without the surgery, and much more. The phone number is 1-800-524-8836.